Welcome to another episode of The Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Today, my guest is Rae Sikora. Rae has been a spokesperson for animals, the environment, and human rights for over 45 years. Her programs have been changing people's vision of what is possible to create in our lives and in the world. Rae has worked internationally with participants ranging from teachers, students, prisoners, businesses, and activists. As co-founder of the Institute for Humane Education, Rae created interactive critical thinking tools that are now being utilized by people around the globe. She holds degrees in cultural anthropology and environmental education from the University of Wisconsin. Rae was selected by the North American Vegetarian Society in 2013 as a recipient of its Vegan Hall of Fame and is co-author of Plant Peace Daily, Everyday Outreach for People Who Care. Her semi-fictional memoir, Little Jew on the Soul Train, is currently available on both Amazon and Ingram Spark. Her novel, Free to a Good Home, will be published in the summer of 2022. Stick around. I want to introduce her to you. Hi, Rae. Good morning. How are you?
Nancy, good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. I'm so excited to talk to you because you have so much information, and let's see how much we could get out there in this short amount of time.
We'll do the Cliff Notes, the concentrated.
That's what this program is, Cliff Notes. So first of all, first question off the back, how did you get into veganism?
Oh, accidentally. It wasn't in my plan. It was years ago. It was 46 years ago. And I had already been vegetarian, and that was accidental because I had never heard of a vegetarian. And, I walked into a leather shop with a friend, and I kind of looked around and there were skins hanging, and I said, "Don't buy this stuff. It's dead animals." The woman behind the counter said, "Do you eat meat?" And I was 15. And I was like, what does meat have to do with dead animals? And then the light bulb, boom, I connected. She just asked a simple question. She wasn't confrontational. And I said, "No, I don't eat animals." And my friend looked at me like I was crazy because I'd just eaten a hot dog. And we left. She said, "Why'd you lie?" I said, "I didn't lie. I will never eat animals again," because I made the connection. And I loved it. I considered myself like an animal lover, but it was dogs. And then, some years later, I walked in on a dairy operation when they were separating the calves. And that just set things in motion. The moms were bellowing and bleeding at the barbed wire. The babies were being taken away, the males. And I was like, no more dairy. And that made me go, what's going on with the rest of my food? Where do my eggs come from? Where does cheese come from? Where does this come from? And I stopped eating all animal products, but I didn't know the word vegan. And then I met a woman, she called herself vegan. I said, "What is that exactly?" And when she told me what it was, I'm like, that's me. I was so excited. I had a word for myself. And I didn't know anybody else was vegan except this one woman who I never saw again after that. And it just, for me, I wouldn't have done it if it was a diet, like diets come and go. For me, it helped me find what are my core values. It's sort of like it took blinders off of me. What was difficult was I didn't have any support system. I was eating really bad tasting food because I was making it myself. And and I didn't know much, I didn't know much about cooking or making good food without animal products, but I figured that out eventually. And I mean, the real issue then was family, because they were really concerned. They thought I had really gone off the deep end, and that I needed professional help. And, they were just like, "You're going to die and we need to help you." So, but there was no way I could turn my back on it. There was no way. Once I saw behind closed doors, closed gates, and then I started investigating things. I started photographing, touring places. Oh, where does veal come from? Can I photograph? Yes. Back then, you could go in anywhere. And I was shocked at how much was hidden from us. People were buying things at restaurants and groceries but they didn't know the real price of it. They didn't know what is the true price to the animals and what's the true price, even where I lived, true price to the rivers, dairy cattle, all the manure going into our pristine rivers. So I learned a lot, me and that little camera of mine. More, that's difficult though. When you have a knowledge, this, when you have knowledge of something that is not common knowledge in the culture, and the culture continues to support the violence, but what the reality is, ooh, that's a tough place. So I had to really adjust, like emotionally. And eventually I found my community. And now it's huge, I mean, we have such huge vegan community basically everywhere in the world and locally. And when people say they're lonely and they don't know another vegan, I'm like, how is that possible? It's grown so much.
And especially with the availability now of virtual meetings and, connecting with people. If you can't get out, you can still connect with people and you still can get support.
Sure.
So it's like, that's why kind of the pandemic was a little blessing, if I could say that, because it brought awareness of the animals and the connection, to the zoonotic disease. And also it helped us jump forward to be able to meet with people all over the world because of, using Zoom or go to meetings or things like that. So
yeah, there was definitely a big bright side to it. It worked for me.
It worked for me. That's how I got started on the Vegan Pulse. So I love it,
Really? That's what, oh my God. Yeah. Cause you were put in a position, okay, if I'm going to do this, how am I going to do it?
Right. Because I was tabling, I was going to events, and then all of a sudden you can't do that. So I belong to Toastmasters. And one of my projects was you have to do a podcast. And I have been thinking about how am I going to get out there again, to communicate veganism. And I said, okay, my first podcast is going to be for Toastmasters and it's the Vegan Pulse. And so that's how it started.
Brilliant. I love it. I'm so glad.
125 episodes later, here we are.
125? Oh my God. You're amazing.
And it's wonderful, like you said, to connect with people all over the world, because when you talk to them and you hear about their stories, that's why for me it's so important to get first the story, how you came to veganism, because some of them are similar, some of them are not.
Yeah.
But still there are people all over the world from different backgrounds who still found veganism.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
And so right now my new thing is to try to, we need our next step, we have vegan foods coming into the food service community, restaurants and so forth. But the next thing is to get people to get into activism, to talk to legislators, to talk to council people, sign the petitions, send emails, make phone calls. And that is what I think that we need to move forward now, because it's great that we're having these places we're serving vegan food, but we can't change laws eating at restaurants. We gotta, take another step.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of it as, just everybody has some way that they can bring veganism out into the world beyond their own choice to be vegan, and it can be small steps, it can be big steps. It doesn't matter, if somebody is an introvert or an extrovert, it doesn't matter if they have no money, if they have a lot of money, it doesn't matter. There's some way that you can take it beyond your personal out into the world. And inspiring people to do that, that's really been important to my partner JC and I. And I see it growing. And I don't think there's an accident, it has that sort of ripple effect where we all, you affect one person, they affect another, and it ripples out into the world. And I see huge change. I never thought that I would see vegan on products as a good marketing tool. And now you see it all the time. I'm like, why are they putting vegan on that? It's bubbly water, like you see it everywhere. It's a marketing tool now, and that is incredible. That says that the culture has reached that tipping point where it's just going to grow from here. It's amazing.
Right. And I know that you co-authored Plant Peace Daily with everyday activism, for people who care. And so you have a book, and I did post it because last interview was with JC, your partner. And so I did post the link to the PDF for people who want to go ahead and take a look at that, because it could be as easy as being on the computer and signing a petition. I mean, because people think they don't have time, but there are definitely things that you could do. And even when speaking with people, now I like you to retell a story that I heard you tell about a time when you and JC went to a store and you saw a car, and in the back of the car there was a sticker that said "Save the Dolphins" or something like that, and
Oh
the
my
person
God.
that came out of that car was wearing a fur coat or something. Can you share that?
Totally forgot about that story. So I'll see if I can even remember the details. I think I can. So we were going into a hardware store. This couple was coming out wearing matching fur coats, which is kind of weird. Anyway, it was in Santa Fe and it wasn't even cold. And they were wearing fur coats. And I was like, oh, JC, just give me a minute before we go in. And I went to the couple. They got into a very fancy sports car. With that, what you said, they had a license plate, and that the license plate was one of those that you can pay a little extra for, and it said "Save the Dolphins," and it had dolphins on it. And I knocked on their window, and she rolled down her, oh no, he rolled down his window. He was driving. And I said, hi. I said, I saw your license plate. And so now I know that you are both very caring people and that you love animals. And so they were like, yes, they were all excited. Yes, we do. We love animals. I said, okay, I am going to invite you to something then. And they looked excited, like I was going to invite them to a party or something. I said, I want to invite you to go online and to research the amount of violence that went into your coats that you're wearing, your fur coats. And then he turned forward, his face went blank, and he wouldn't look at me, but she looked at me. And I said, the reason I'm inviting you to this is because I can tell that you are very caring people. And I think you would want to know, and I think it would be a game changer for you. And she said, we'll look into it. She was looking up at me. And I said, fantastic. I said, thank you. Thank you for caring. And then that was it. And he was so happy to put the window up.
And the reason why I ask you to share that story is because it's kind of, you weren't rude, you weren't abrasive, you weren't rude. You just approached them from a kind, compassionate space and spoke kindly, and they listened, and so every day we have those kinds of chances as well.
Absolutely. And for me, the form of activism that feels the best to me, where I don't feel like Darth Vader angry in the world, works best for me if I see the best in people. I'm going to see the best in you, and I am going to speak to that part of you, that core loving part of you, which is in everyone. It's just buried a little more in some people, or their blinders are on. But that's what I'm going to speak to. I'm going to speak to the part of them that I know cares on some level, and invite them rather than fight them. Like, I'm going to invite them to a loving, compassionate community, and to the loving, compassionate part of themselves, rather than, how could you, how could you, how could you? Because I picture sort of this door on people's hearts, and how we communicate with them, that door either stays open and we keep communicating, or it slams shut. And I think it sets people back on their compassion path if you confront them in a way that makes them feel like they're a horrible person. So yeah, that's just my way of doing it, and it feels better at the end of the day. And it works a lot. It works really well, much of the time, most of the time.
Well, it's like the story you told when they told you, when you were in that leather place and you were telling them not to buy, your friend not to buy, and then the lady said, well, do you eat animals? And all of a
Good
sudden it
question.
made a connection to you. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like not too long ago I was talking to this lady and I said, I don't eat animal flesh. And she goes, her face went kind of like, flesh. And then she came back like a week later. She goes, ever since you said flesh, I can't eat meat. I'm
Isn't
like,
that
well, that's what it
neat?
is.
And also like that, like the culture hides a lot of violence behind certain language. So language is powerful. I do even whole workshops on language, what language we use, and because culture creates language and language creates culture. And so, part of our culture is that other species are things, and it, the way we talk about other species, or other species are roadkill, not a highway fatality. So I just shift it. I shift it. If I see that an animal's been killed on the road, that's a highway fatality that I talk about. It's not roadkill. Because if I said roadkill about a human, people would be like, that's so disrespectful. Oh, but we say it about other species. So it's really powerful to switch your language up. Even my computer, it's so part of the culture. My computer corrects me if I use a respectful pronoun for another species. That's how ingrained it is in our culture. So what you said to that woman saying flesh, it's like, oh, because none of the packages in the grocery store say flesh.
Yeah. And I talk like that, like all the time. I'm like, I used to be a flesh eater, but I'm not a flesh eater anymore.
I
And they're
love
like,
that. I'm going to steal that. That is great.
every time, everything I have to tell you, talking about stealing, well, not stealing, but I took inspiration from you because you wrote that letter in the Santa Fe, New Mexican, to the editor about the rodeos. So I did a presentation. You inspired me to do a presentation for our Toastmasters group on rodeos. And at the end of it, I did have some people who like, I didn't really put two and two together, because I talked about my first experience when I went to the rodeo here. I'd never been to a rodeo before. And my boss at the time invited me to go to the fair, and then we went to the rodeo place. And as soon as that guy on the horse took that poor calf and lassoed it and pulled its leg from underneath it, I'm like, okay, I can't do this. This is violence. This is disgraceful. And he looked
Yeah.
at me and I'm like, sorry, this is not,
Yeah. It's
who's
like,
this fun for?
yes, exactly. And it's not sport. It's not anything like that. And what you did by like presenting it to the Toastmasters and some people waking up was, sorry about the dogs.
That's okay.
It's just the exclamation points, I call it, if I'm
We're
talking.
animal friendly.
But what you did when you talked to the Toastmasters about rodeos, you pulled the veil off of something that is just familiar. People get into those familiar habits without examining the reality. They're looking right at it, but it's so accepted in the culture
Right.
that the violence is right here and people can't see it.
Right, because the spurs on the horses,
Everything.
raking them, or some people didn't even know that they put those leather straps
The cinch trap.
to
Yeah.
annoy the genitals of the bulls to make them buck and stuff like that. And and it's like, what? They
You
thought that they
opened
just did
some
that on
eyes.
their own.
Yeah, you totally opened some eyes at the Toastmasters. That's so great.
So it's like, so that's what I'm saying. So you have opportunity everywhere to
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about veganism and the message of love that veganism is, and to what society, I hate the word normal. I don't want to be normal. I don't want anything to do with normal, because normal just means that these are laws and things that have been kind of ingrained in us to think that is normal,
For sure. Just
which
cultural
separates us
norms.
from other people. It builds levels of who's better than others. And so I dislike that word with a passion, in case you haven't noticed.
And what does normal mean? Normal means oh, this is culturally accepted. That doesn't make it right. You know, there was a very long period of time when having Africans as slaves in the US and in other places was normal. That doesn't make it right, you
Right.
know? And so you absolutely, it's like, really, my goal in life is to get people to examine, oh, what are my core values? And how do those core values align with my daily choices?
Right.
You know, do they really align? Does it really align? Oh, if my core values are of compassion, does this choice align with that? Does this choice align with that? And that is what each individual gets to do for themselves, you know, really examine that. And it's rare, we're not taught that life skill when we're young, you
Right.
know, to really examine our lives and what do our choices represent and promote. And I think that's the most powerful. Like, take the golden rule, which is in every religion, and apply it to your daily life. Simple,
It's
you
really
know,
simple. Don't do unto others what you don't want done unto yourself.
exactly.
It's as simple as that.
Yes.
So talk to me a little bit about your semi-fictional memoir, Little Jew on the Soul Train.
So, one form, one of my many forms of activism, and I love writing. And I thought, well, I don't want to just write for fun. Even though it is fun for me, I want it to also be doing a bit of activism and inspiration for people to be more compassionate in the world. And so it was very fun to write. But of course, everything I write is going to be sprinkled with people who are rescuing animals, vegan, and I love this form of activism because it's sort of, it's not the main story. Veganism, rescuing animals isn't the main plot of the story, but it is woven throughout. You know, people waking up to compassion, people who are already vegan, people who are constantly rescuing animals. So those are most of the characters in that book are, that's, they fit into that category. And yeah, so it's been very fun for me. It's loosely based on my life. I changed the names and I added a character who is interviewing the main character, but that's a semi-fictional part. But for the most part, it is about my life, my path, and it's just, it came from decades of people saying, please just write your story. And I thought, I don't really want to write about Rae Sikora. So that's the semi-fictional part. It's like, let me write this character, you know, who has the same experiences as me, but has a different name. And let me add some more interesting characters to me anyway in it.
And you're working on another one, which is still, it's coming, Free to a Good Home.
Coming, yeah, yeah, it's very
Okay.
close. And that one's about a homeless woman. And this homeless woman also is sort of, her eyes are opening to compassion by connecting with someone who introduces her to a lot of concepts.
Great. And now talk to me about the dove.
Oh, do we have time for that?
We have a few minutes. Yes, we do.
um, JC and I found this property, and everything we do is always sprinkled with, ooh, how can this benefit the compassion community, the vegan community? So we got this property, and I had 2.5 years of buyer's remorse. We fixed it up, but I was like, what the hell have we done? Why are we doing this? And we finally got it to this point where it's like, we love it. It's magical, peaceful sanctuary. And yeah, it's just divine. Like even the hummingbirds, you know, we're going through 5 gallons of hummingbird nectar a day. It's kind of a wild scene with the hummingbirds, but we called it the Dove. JC came up with this because Dove stands for Dome of Vegan Events. And we created a pavilion so there can be outdoor events, and anybody who is promoting compassion can use that space, whether it's yoga or dance or a food demo or a potluck, anything, anything that is promoting compassion, only vegan, of course. Here we have a grill in that pavilion, but it's all vegan grill. And a lot of people have taken advantage of it, which is great. And now we have 2 RVs that we rent out. We have campsites, and any money that comes in is going toward different nonprofits that we're supporting. So we're kind of rotating between those. And yeah, it's like, I don't know. I said to JC one day, like, do you think we'll ever just stop doing these projects? Because we always have like a stack of projects we're working on in terms of outreach and everything. And then I said, oh, never mind. I said, if we weren't doing projects, what would we be doing? We're taking up space on Earth. Let's do projects. And JC's in his 70s. I'm almost 70. And I think we'll be doing it until we're like turned to compost. I think we'll be in our 90s. We'll be like, what's the next project, babe?
So any last words that you would like to tell to our viewers about anything that has to do with veganism, of course?
I think if someone is tuning into Vegan Pulse, they are either vegan or they're vegan curious. So I would say this: if you're vegan, thank you. Thank you for living your values, and thank you for who you are in the world. If you're vegan curious, this is a beautiful place to be at this time, because you have every food available to you, all the information available to you online. And the best thing you can do for yourself, if you're vegan curious, is to align your values and your choices. It makes you feel like you're whole, and you don't wonder like, oh, what am I doing on the planet? You know what you're doing on the planet. You are making the world a better place for all life. You're the co-creator of the world that most people would want to live in. And that is a beautiful thing. It's beautiful. And, to you, Nancy, I just have to say, I'm so grateful for you and all that you do, what your life represents. Everyone can feel very hopeless in the world. And I wouldn't say I'm a hopeful person. I try to plant positive seeds, but I'm not hopeful for the future of the planet. But on a daily basis, what keeps me positive is knowing that there are people like you in the community. And, that's what it keeps me going. It's like, yay, we're not alone. Yay. There's other people who aren't just self-centered, other people who are like, let's create a compassionate world. And it's beautiful.
Right, because if you help create a compassionate world, you're going to have a compassionate life.
Exactly. So it is kind of selfish, but in a good way. In an altruistic way, it's selfish, if that can go together.
I think that's what people don't understand, that we are trying to create a better world for everybody. It's not just the animals, it's for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's something people forget, oh, if we have clean air, clean water, and, a healthy, compassionate planet, it's good for the humans too, because I have people say to me, don't you care about people? And I'm like, well, it's not mutually exclusive. If we create this healthy world, humans benefit too. But you've probably had people say that to you too. And then what I often do when people say that is I'll say, oh, you care a lot about people. Tell me everything you're doing for humans. And then they're just like, usually they're not doing anything.
Right.
But, they want to kind of trip you up a little bit.
Words, conversations.
For sure.
Well, Rae, thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Nancy. I love connecting with you.
I do too. So until next time, bye-bye.
Bye, love.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Remember, check out our website, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have a pulse, you have a purpose. Live vegan.